Yo, what's poppin' people? Clorinde's gonna be released in 4.7, so let's look at her kit, builds and teams in this 6-minute mega guide. So what does she do and how do we play her? To put it simply, press a skill to convert her normal attacks to electro, normal attack 3 times to build Bond of Life, use a skill again to drain the Bond of Life, which also heals her, and repeat. So just do 3 normals, 1 skill, 3 normals, 1 skill, and so on. For a bit more information, when you activate Clorinde's skill, she enters a state where her normal attacks are converted into electro, and each normal attack gives her some Bond of Life. In this state, her skill's converted into an attack that lunges forward dealing electro damage, it clears Bond of Life, and it heals her. It's worth noting that she gets more damage and healing from her skill in this state when a Bond of Life is equal to or greater than 100% of her HP. That's why we do 3 normal attacks. She has a couple passives, where electro damage dealt is increased after her teammates trigger electro-related reactions, and another passive where she gets crit rate when a Bond of Life fluctuates, which will be over time. Her burst gives you Bond of Life and deals damage, so there are 2 ways you could use her burst. You could start with it to grant a Bond of Life straight away, or you could finish with it to take advantage of the passives and deal more damage with it. For pros and cons, her damage is a big positive in her kit. If you run it in aggravate or overloaded teams, you're going to be clapping cheeks. For self-healing means you can play 3 other damage dealers or supports without having to worry about sustainability. Another positive is that she's easy to build, with a lot of weapon and artifact options which we'll look at in a second. She also takes boss materials from Apep, who's an older boss, so we can triple crown her day 1 without her materials competing with other characters like Arlecchino. Unfortunately, we already have strong electro DPSs that can make use of aggravate and overloaded. It's not that she'll be useless to an account that has Raiden, Kerching or Cyno, but it's a shame that she doesn't have a niche unique to her. You can use her outside of those reactions, but once you start to dive into Taser and Hyperbloom teams, you realise there are better options already available. It could also be argued that she isn't great in overloaded teams anyway, and that the teams are being carried by strong supports like Fischl, Beidou and Xiangling. Either way, she'll be a strong unit on your account, but not that different to what you might already have. If you'd rather save your Primo Gems for someone else, or even Natlan which is round the corner, you're not missing out on a must-pull character. In terms of weapons, her signature will be best, followed by Ayato's weapon Haran and Mist Splitter. One weapon I'm surprised to not see people talk about is Chiori's weapon. It gives 88 crit damage, which is perfect considering how much crit rate she has. It also gives 16% normal attack damage and 24% elemental skill damage, and these are doubled for 15 seconds when a teammate deals Geo damage. Yunjin for the Geo trigger would also give normal attack damage and attack speed. The 4-star options are solid too. Black Sword gives crit rate, 40% normal attack damage and some healing. The Fontaine craftable Finale of the Deep for a shit ton of attack, and Lion's Roar gives attack plus 36% extra damage to opponents affected by Pyro or Electro, which will be almost all the time with her teams. Her artifacts are easy. Like Arlecchino, the new Bond of Life set, Harmonic Whimsy, will be a best in slot, but 4-piece Gladiator might be the better choice for your account if the substats are better. 4-piece Marechaussee Hunter will be solid in Farina teams, and Thunder and Fury is a good choice for aggravate teams. The skill cooldown reduction can allow you to enter her skill stance twice in a slightly longer rotation. If you have Arlecchino and the spare resin, I think it's worth farming the new domain, but if you don't, your best Gladiator pieces will still be more than enough to clear all the content in the game. Now for my favourite part of the video, let's look at some teams. As I've already mentioned, Aggravate's going to be a strong reaction for her. Nahida gives a lot of elemental mastery and contributes damage to the team, so we'll put her in. Fischl's C6 is going to get spammed here, so she can be another source of damage, with Kazuha buffing both Clorinde and Fischl. If you decide you want more comfort at the expense of damage, you could use a prototype Ambit on Nahida, because Fischl, Nahida and Kazuha don't have self-healing, and will still need some field time to use their talents. Alternatively, you could use Baiju. With a Favonius Codex, he's going to be contributing a little energy, and his passive will increase Clorinde's damage bonus from Aggravate. What if you're bored of Kazuha? You could swap him out for Yelan, put Nahida back in, and you have another solid variation of that team but with another element. It has all the elements for Hyperbloom, but I consider it to be less of a Hyperbloom team than the Cyno alternatives and more of a Quicken team. Clorinde gets the damage buff from Yelan. Yelan's damage contributes to the team's damage, but there'll still be enough Electro and Dendro that you maintain the Quicken aura. Putting Dendro aside and looking at Overloaded, you could run Chevreuse, Fischl and Xiangling. It's different to most overloaded teams we already use because you don't need Bennett. Clorinde can self-heal, Chevreuse has a little healing, and she also gives enough energy that Xiangling doesn't need Bennett to battery her. If you're bored of Xiangling, you could use Toma. If you have his constellations, his C1 reduces his burst cooldown, meaning the team's rotation is shorter, and his C6 increases Clorinde's normal attack damage. His constellations compensate for the damage lost by dropping Xiangling. If you have Sara's C6, you could run her with Chevreuse and Xiangling, and she's going to give Clorinde some attack and crit damage. I think it's also nice to just use characters you don't use as often. I find it slows down the burnout. Let's say you wanted a team full of characters that have damage triggered by normal attacks. You could run Clorinde with Yelan, Xingqiu, and then one of Beidou or Fischl. I think the Dendro variants will be stronger, but the blue and purple numbers all over the screen are satisfying too. For those of you with massive balls, Clorinde, Furina, Fischl, and Kazuha looks like it'll deal a lot of damage. There'll be 3 damage dealers, and then also 2 buffers with Kazuha and Furina amplifying the team's damage output. For those of you that don't care too much for meta and just want to see your Clorinde and Navia ship in the same team, you could run Clorinde with Fischl, Navia, and Yunjin. Fischl gives Navia enough Electro for more shards to increase her skill damage. A C6 Yunjin increases Clorinde's normal attack damage, but also the attack speed, meaning more Fischl C6 procs. If the team has uptime on crystallized shields, you'll also get the Geo Resonance to increase the team's damage and also decrease the enemy's Geo resistance to make Navia hit harder. Overall, she's a solid character at C0. Easy to build, big damage and aggravate and overloaded teams thanks to her self-healing, allowing more attack-orientated teammates, flexible outside of those reactions, but probably not as strong as your alternatives for them. I'm going to be dropping similar guides for Siegeween and Cephos, as well as a guide on who to build for Imaginarium Theatre. Subscribe to the channel if you're interested in them, and take it easy.